So then what's Israel's next move? Because I know that you said earlier in the conversation that they cryptically said something along the lines of, we have more surprises in store. I mean, the pager
Yeah.
attack, that caught everyone by surprise. So what can we expect from them and when?
That remains to be seen. I don't think anyone who woke up Tuesday morning could have expected a bunch of pagers in Lebanon would have started exploding simultaneously. That was a very surprising move by the Israelis. I think we can see for the time being, perhaps, a return to the status quo ante. The tit for tat attacks that have been going on between Israel and Hezbollah, perhaps an intensification of the Israeli campaign during this war of attrition with Hezbollah, more airstrikes, more targeted attacks on Radwan Force commanders and other Hezbollah personnel and assets in South Lebanon and elsewhere. We've already heard rumors. I haven't seen it substantiated in the Israeli media, but that's perhaps because of the military censor prevents these things from being disclosed ahead of time. That there's been troop movement to the north of commando, paratrooper forces, artillery, different forces that could be preparing for some kind of ground maneuver in Lebanon. Now, that could be a precautionary measure. That could be a measure that is, you move forces there in anticipation that Hezbollah may overreact to something like this. It very well may not be an offensive measure. But what we can say for certain is like I said, we can expect more of what we've seen over the past months and weeks, but with an intensification from the Israeli side, more attacks on South Lebanon, on Hezbollah's assets and personnel.
We've had a conversation in the past, and I've talked to many experts from the FDD about this, and there's always the risk, or there's concern about the risk for an escalation to a wider regional war. You mentioned those tit for tat airstrikes. This obviously kind of ups the ante a bit, these attacks, these pager and wireless device attacks. What is the risk for a regional wider war now?
I think it's minimal. The ball is in Hezbollah's court, and they seem to not want it. I mean, if you're planning a war, you don't have your Secretary General get up and give a speech. Again, unless this is a major deception and Hezbollah is going to lull the Israelis into a false sense of security and in a week, launch that major campaign. But they're not in a position to handle that war. I think what we saw today was Hezbollah stating, not in no uncertain terms because they can't say so, that they're going to resume business as usual. They're going to take this they're going to absorb this blow, and that they're going to respond in a manner that does not compromise either the organization's safety, its long-term existence, or the broader war goals, which Secretary General Nasrallah emphasized again today, is to continue to pressure Israel to halt its campaign in Gaza. Any escalation of the conflict into a wider regional conflict will delay that, and they don't want that.
This obviously, as we've been stating, was a surprise this past week. So, as the expert here, as someone who has studied Hezbollah, what specifically are you looking out for next in the upcoming days?
Again, I would say more of the same. Hezbollah will very likely also intensify its attacks on northern Israel. There were 2 Israeli soldiers that were killed this morning. There's an intensification of the anti-tank guided missile attacks and loitering munitions. There were several Israelis wounded in these attacks, in addition to the 2 soldiers killed. So we can see some attempt by Hezbollah to draw blood, but within the rules of the conflict as they've existed since October 8th. We may see Hezbollah start to prepare for some clandestine action. We won't see that, but I can assume that Hezbollah's response to this is going to be a clandestine action. I mean, this is what this attack may have been in response to. If we recall that Shin Bet, just before the beepers started blowing up on Tuesday, had announced that they'd foiled a Hezbollah attempt to assassinate a former Israeli security official by remotely detonating an explosive from Lebanon. So it seemed like this was a tit for tat. If you want to remotely detonate an explosive from Lebanon, we can remotely detonate several explosives from Israel and do you considerable more damage. At the same time, that does not mean Hezbollah. I don't think Hezbollah has the capability to respond on the scale and in kind to Israel. But they will attempt to do something, I think, that will cause sufficient harm to Israel and sufficient counter-psychological impact, be it maybe targeting Israeli soft underbelly targets or Jewish soft underbelly targets, or maybe another attack within Israel. But I don't think we'll see that in the coming days. This is going to take time and planning on behalf of Hezbollah.
David Daoud, I appreciate you coming on today, breaking down the situation. And as it develops, I hope you come back on and continue the conversation. David Daoud, thanks for joining me.
It's always a pleasure.